Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Built in New York series where I'm connecting you to amazing companies, startups, founders doing awesome things and changing the world as we know it. One of those, one of those guys is the founder and CEO of Ponstech. That's ponstech.co, and his name is Soner Haci. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Welcome. And Thanks for having me.
No, it's all good, dude. So, obviously, you're not from the US. We live in
No.
the dream, baby. American dream is real. But which we'll get into, I hope. But for our viewers around the world, Sona, who haven't heard about the cool things that you guys are doing as a team, why don't you paint a picture for us of your background and maybe give us the elevator pitch of the origin story of Ponstech?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, so I grew up in Germany, and I studied CS, and then I studied CS, and then start working in Siemens in their healthcare department. But I was more responsible for emerging tech, so looking for new technologies and new developments that we can add to Siemens, but also new market entries. So that was my job for quite a while, and but also my brother, who is also my co-founder, is a professor at Rutgers and in New Jersey. So, and the whole technology was based on his research. So that was like how we started initially developing PONS. And right now the technology is what we are doing with PONS is basically we are taking this traditional ultrasound technology and making it a consumer product so that medical imaging can be performed by anyone, but especially anywhere, especially focusing on value-based outpatient care.
Okay. And so this is actually a personal story. You lost, I think it was you or your brother lost or both of you, I suppose, lost your dad
Yeah.
through an issue that could have been solved if your
Yes.
product was available. So just to unpack that for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. So that was the initial starting point of my brother's research, which was we lost like my our father was had like these always these high blood pressure problems that need to be monitored more closely. But he was living in like with my mother. He was living in not in the city center, more in the rural areas, and he was not really following discharge orders. And then basically it happened that usually the case with high blood pressure and also certain chronic diseases connected with that, it causes like after a while, after a certain age, like also a huge potential risk of brain bleeding. And that happened in a really long time. But the thing is that if he had like the opportunity to provide to perform like a certain imaging at home with a shorter time period, that would be avoided. So, and that was the initially starting point. Then like his brain bleeding happened like while he was driving the car. So, and then it all of a sudden like was a totally disaster, and he passed away after that incident, after that accident. But yeah, that was like the initial point that my brother was thinking about. Okay, like how we can develop something that can be easily used by someone without any medical background, and while he is at home or while he is on holidays or whatever. So that was the initial starting point, and that happens to be not only a personal problem, but also really a bigger growing problem right now in healthcare system.
Hmm. So this is about giving consumers access to medical imaging or affordable medical imaging technology. Is that loosely correct?
Yeah, that is that the technology empowers consumers to perform ultrasound imaging by themselves. So that's the idea. Like because at the end of the day, ultrasound imaging doesn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. So you don't need to really go back all the time to the hospital. It can be easily done at home ultimately. But the technology is providing that with the help of AI.
Okay, cool. So we'll get into the product in a moment. So, so how big is this market? Because I can't think, for me personally, I've needed to have medical imaging access. You know what I'm saying? Especially
Sure.
AI driven one. So who's this actually? Is this really for consumer? And if it is, how big is the market opportunity? And I'd love to understand, as I'm sure our audience around the world would also, is what are the use cases for this? Am I like scanning my baby? Like maybe that's one, but but is it like my son sprained his ankle? Like how do all those things play out? So firstly, what's the opportunity and what are the use cases for this?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Like, you should think about like the opportunity or the market size pre-COVID and post-COVID. So, I mean, the reason why I'm saying that is like the right now the whole healthcare system is moving to be this like hospital at home approach, and that is also what we are like point of care, hospital at home, value-based outpatient care, and all this stuff. So that is a huge and very fast growing market right now. Like the only if you think about this point of care market, like remote monitoring point of care, it is like estimated right now over like $25 billion. But the thing is that they are estimating in the following by the end of 2 years, like by the end of 2025, it will go up to 60 billion. So and you can see that like that is really changing the whole healthcare system itself, and that is also why a lot of companies are interested in the field, like especially like okay, what happens with the outpatient? So and that is like the how big is the market? And regarding to the second point, like of course like babies and pregnancy monitoring, that is something, but what is much more important for us especially is uh, being able to monitor chronic diseases outside the hospital setting. So that is like, let's say you have, like it should be you, like it can be someone in your family, or like you have someone in your family with these like conditions. Like it can be like cirrhosis, it can be fatty liver disease, it can be ovarian cancer, it can be breast cancer, liver metastasis, such those kind of diseases that are progressing really fast. But also, especially for these kind of diseases, it is extremely important to catch them earlier. Right now, that's the bigger problem, because at the moment, like around like that there was a new study, like close to like 60% of the people that has like that are in this risk level, they cannot do these regular visits or regular imaging. So that is the focus that we have, how we can kind of track, give the technology to people living in rural areas. It can be people like with that doesn't have time to go to back to the hospital for regular visits. It can be like low mid income families that doesn't have that option at all. So as soon as they are out, they become outpatient, they are discharged. The regular visit times are right now, like especially if you think about medical imaging, 3 to 6 months. And if you think about a chronic disease, 3 to 6 months is a really long time to do the next appointment. So, and usually the disease progress cannot be monitored. And that is the focus point that we have, like how we can provide people with potential low to mid risk on chronic diseases a tool that they can monitor with their doctor how the disease progress is happening outside the hospital settings. And that is what we kind of want to provide to the doctor, a really like a continuous, a regular, not like every 3 months or 6 months, maybe every 2 weeks, and maybe a week, every week. Like these progress about how these, like for example, how the tissue is changing in 1 week, how the or 2 weeks. That is the focus point that we have right.
Okay. So it's post surgery follow up, but being enabling the patient to submit their scans remotely or to provide clinicians or hospitals or doctors access to patients so that they don't need to wait every 3 to 6 months to come back in for another scan. So there's that. And then there's also the use case where I'm a woman, I'm in my mid 50s, and I want to scan my breasts for like tissue abnormalities, as an example, or I'm pregnant and I'm late trimester, and I want to submit my scan to my pediatrician or gynecologist to to do any kind of remote assessment and things. So that's it.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So what have you guys actually built then? Like, how does this actually work? So talk to us about your product.
Yeah, sure. What we built is, and what we are developing is, first of all, there are two components in the technology. One, the hardware part, and then the second, the software. The hardware is a really small mobile point of care ultrasound device that comes with a pre-configured tablet. they are all like uploaded. Everything is running. Anyone like the consumer doesn't need to upload, download anything. So it comes all pre-configured, and then they only need to connect the ultrasound probe with the tablet through Wi-Fi. That's a really simple, straightforward process. And then the interesting part in our technology is we integrated these AI-driven navigation feature. So which is basically a navigation for someone without any medical background, like you, me, or someone, or it can be like a caregiver that doesn't know like medical imaging or such. So, and the navigation system is basically navigating the user through an avatar how to use the prop, how to move it according to the anatomical part that they need to scan. For example, their doctor wants a liver scan every 2 weeks or every week. So then they just got these appointment from their doctor. They open the system, and then the system navigates you first of all how to find your liver. So if you are on the right spot, then it says okay, you are on the right spot. Or if you are not, then it says move left, move right, move up, then stop. It's scanning. So that navigation system provides like a really easy to use system that provides you a right spot, and then the whole system collects all the images in between. And also like the second part comes in play because then we have like these AI system which is doing all the image processing and risk analysis, and also the patented image enhancement technology that we integrated basically collects all the image, creates a new image from those collected partially images, and then provides the risk assessment to the doctor, meaning that okay, 2 weeks ago that tissue was not there, or 2 weeks ago that tissue was 0.1 millimeter and right now it's 0.2 millimeter, it's growing, and these kind of things, so that the doctor knows exactly how the progress is happening, and it can compare with the previous scans, but also it has a clear vision about the image with the image enhancement technology that we are integrating. So, but the whole idea is like uh, seeing the consumer as a source of medical image, and that's it. The consumer doesn't need to do anything else. It just needs to hold the prop, follow the avatar. That's it, and the rest is done through the system.
Okay. And so, how much does this cost? Like, if Matt Brown, the consumer, needs to check his breasts, like, how much is this going to set me back? Where do I buy it for argument's sake?
Well, what we are right, like as soon as like we started this developing, we had one thing in our mind. So basically, that was we need to first create an affordable technology, but also accessible technology. So those two like mission statements that we have brings us to that part that you asked. Basically, we don't want someone to purchase the device, pay like okay $2,000 or whatever to the device, and then use it. But more, no, you don't need to buy it. You just pay as you scan or pay per session. So that is how the system. You can either directly subscribe to the system, or if you have like already, if you're already a member of like a certain like insurance company or like a healthcare provider, like certain providers, then you just get it with these memberships. But the whole idea is like you just pay as per session. This is between $5 to $10. So the other thing is like, because we want to make, even if you don't have any insurance, if you're not covered, so you don't need to think about, oh, okay, can I pay it or am I able to pay it? Because $5 to $10 is basically like, okay, that is no, everyone can do that. So, but the idea is like making it affordable so that we can create much more image. And then, as I said, like the cool thing is focused on catching something really early, then preventing it become really like chronic and critical. And that is how we kind of also see the value in the technology, so that anyone doesn't need to be thinking twice about, okay, can I use it, can I afford it.
Okay, and there's no FDA approval or anything like that, right?
At the moment it's not. So because like the good thing is that we started the pre-sub meetings with the FDA, and the meetings are really promising. So, and the goal is to start the application early next year, and then hopefully to get it in 12 months time.
Okay. What's your unfair advantage then? I mean, is medical imaging, I mean, as an idea, it's it's not, I mean, I think it's novel in the sense of like giving consumers access to it, but certainly medical imaging from a clinical doctor perspective, that stuff's been around for quite some time. So what's the unfair advantage that you guys have, would you say, from a product or business perspective?
From the product is like, I mean, we were really focused on like point 1, point 0 actually. So we were only focused on the consumer, like, okay, how we can bring it to the consumer level. And we have like two main advantages. One, we developed the whole as like the very important point here is the navigation system, because you cannot assume like a consumer knows where the liver is or where the kidney is or how to move it if that's like a woman like through breast or whatever or ovarian. So developing like a navigation system geared on like someone that doesn't know anything at all, preventing over tilting everything, that was the very challenging, and that is one of the biggest advantages that we have right now, which basically a consumer grade navigation. And the second thing is we are not the technology is not only providing a medical image, so like, but it is more like giving the doctor also like these risk assessment report as well, which means that, okay, like saying that, because ultrasound itself is not the best image quality, and but if we can make it better and more clear image and also provide the assessment report to the doctor, it will save them time. At the end of the day, doctor will always have the last word, but with those information, we will be able to provide them much more in-depth information about how the process is happening outside the hospital.
Okay, got it. So I was just curious to find out how many women in the United States actually have breast cancer. So each year in the United States, about 264,000 cases of breast cancer are diagnosed in women. See, it is actually true. I didn't realize that. And about 2,400 in men. I didn't realize that, eh?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
that's also like that. No one thinks about men but it's also a case in men as well.
So, yeah, I mean, I was kind of being facetious when I was like, oh, Matt Brown wants to scan it. But that's actually a thing.
No, that's the thing.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. So, I'm also interested to know, like, how many women are pregnant right now, USA. Okay, so here you go. So 3.6 million.
Yep.
That's a lot, man.
That's a lot.
That's quite a big market.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much for men. You could start there, niche down,
Exactly.
dominate the men category.
Because on the other hand, if you also think that right now everyone is like kind of like scared to go to the hospitals, even though it's like they say, okay, COVID is over, but still people are not really keen on going back to the hospital, waiting hours in the line and these kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. And you guys have also raised or successfully raised your pre-seed round, just over $500,000, closed out in July. How did you find that experience? With the market being the way that it, everyone's like, it's hard right now. It's hard all the time, but it's hard now too. So did you raise from angels, or was it family office, or friends and family and fools?
It was like, yeah, you are right. Especially in companies like in our field, like biotech, life science, medtech, it's even harder. So because usually, like the time frames are longer. You cannot be on the market, or you cannot do that, fake it until you make it, and this kind of stuff. And in our case, we had these two advantages. One, we like the investors that we had in this round, both are venture capital VCs, and they are both interested in biotechnology and investing in biotechnology, life sciences, but also like impact creating ventures, like basically, okay, how the technology can help people, how the technology can help only not people living in cities, but also living in like poorer or like third world developing countries and such. So we had the advantage like having those investors on board. But also the second advantage is the ecosystem right now in healthcare. So it is changing really fast. As I mentioned in the beginning, like right now everything is moving around how hospitals can generate revenue from outpatient, how healthcare system can be more focused on preventing admissions instead of readmissions, how like hospital at home technologies can be developed so that every home can become a potentially primary care center. All these kind of developments also helped us to raise these pre-seed round. And right now we are preparing for the seed round, but I think also, as I said, like the existing environment, always, as I said, it's really tough to raise right now, but still, that's promising.
Mm-hmm. So how much are you looking to raise for your seed?
So we are raising $5 million in our seed round, which bigger, like the bigger chunk will be used on FDA's regulations, which are really expensive, and then growing the team. And right now it's like $5 million.
So how much does it actually cost to get FDA approval? I mean, it might be how long's a piece of string, but what would you suggest that you're looking to cough up for that?
Mm-hmm. It depends on what it depends on your technology, definitely. Like if that is, for example, class 3 invasive technology, that is like huge expensive, then you can end up like way more than $5 million and way longer, like certain surgical things and all this kind of stuff, or like definitely drugs. We are classified as class 2 non-invasive, so that makes it a little bit like easier to get. But at the end of the day, you need to provide some clinical trials, and those clinical trials cost between minimum from $300,000 up to $500,000, $750,000, depending on, as I said, on the number of the patient involved, on the duration and such. So, but we are estimating is like it will definitely cost between like 750K up to $1 million to get the FDA approval.
Yeah, I've got the perfect investor for your seed round. His name's Brandon. It was the last guy I had on the show. He basically, it's quite weird. Like I would say the last month. Well, basically since since I met you, like I've been in, and I don't know why, but just like a massive over index towards startups in the medical hardware space. Don't know why. It's just weird. Not that I'm complaining. But I'm going to connect you to Brandon because he actually sits on funds that only invest in your type of business.
Fantastic. I mean, those people get it. So because they are not expecting, okay, generate revenue next month on these kind of things, but also they can see also like the huge impact that it can create. That will be really valuable.
Cool. So I'll connect you. Okay. Cool, bud. So let's see here. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, right? Medical hardware.
Yeah.
I've said this before on the show for everyone that's been following along. In that, what is kind of what you said, right? That medical hardware is like the hardest thing because one, you have to build the thing, and then it's a different type of. Then you got to get FDA approval, and then you're looking at a 10-year sort of roadmap, and investor payback period is there's not that many sort of private VC funds for medtech hard, versus say SaaS, they're different type.
Yeah.
This is a whole different monster. So it is really, really hard. So what would you say if you cast your mind back over the last few years, like what would you say as a team has been your greatest failure, quote unquote, whatever that is? You didn't raise too late, too early, raise too little, whatever. But what is that thing and that failure, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in our case, in our venture, it was in the beginning, like it was. I think it's also like not only our case, maybe like it's more commonplace for like deep tech startups. We have been trying to focus in a couple of markets. Like, okay, US market is huge, but then there is also this APEC region. There is also this Southeast Asian market, which is really like getting old, and the older population is growing, and they have also like really like good at adjusting to the technology and such. So that was like the biggest mistake that we did on the early stages, like focusing on a couple of markets, not only like on the market that we are in, the basically US market, because that also like cost us time, and not basically we were all over the place basically. Like, okay, we were speaking with someone from Singapore, and then we were speaking with someone from Australia, then we were speaking again someone from the US. So that was like a little bit like too fast, too early for us. That also, as I said, like caused like we lost like really valuable time because not being able to focus on such thing. And the second thing is also correlated to that. we have been focusing on like couple of diseases in the beginning. Oh, okay, like we can do liver disease, we can do kidney, we can do these kind of things. And that was also the second thing. We were not really focused on one chronic disease, which we are right now. And I think those two things, they are kind of like connected with each other. Like, okay, first focus on your market, then focus on the other markets, and then focus on certain, in our case, like a certain niche disease that is basically have bigger problems, or that has a growing concern. And that those two things, they were our biggest mistakes in the early stages, I guess.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to choose,
Yes.
because you
Yeah.
can do pregnancy, you can do breast, breast cancer diagnosis or medical. Like there's so many things you could scan, right?
Correct.
Liver,
Mhm,
and then the other fish
mhm,
paste. So, but I, like my again also said this on the show earlier this year, but like you have to choose. If you don't, you're dead. And because I think
yeah.
most startups are like they're starving on indigestion because they're taking
Mhm,
on too much. They're trying to be everything to everyone. Like I was chatting to Don Bosco, he runs BeHuman.ai, and they've built
mhm,
this AI content personalization platform. So
mhm,
you can create
mhm,
1,000 videos, all personalized with your voice.
mhm.
So you create these variables in a timeline, and then the AI changes what you say tonally and makes your mouth move. So it's like it's hardcore. But and so like, who's that for? Well, it's for e-commerce companies, it's for SaaS companies, it's for medtech. It's like basically it's for everyone. And so he also has that same challenge. Like who do you decide to be for, so that you
Correct.
can cross the chasm and get that
Yes.
drive that word of mouth in clinicians and patients with breast cancer.
Correct.
You know what
Correct.
I mean?
Correct. Correct.
And so I'm curious to double click on how you like. Well, I know you mentioned it up front, but just remind us again, which was the disease that you chose, and what
Mm-hmm.
went into that decision? Like, did you look
Mm-hmm.
at TAM? Did you look at ability to solve? Did you look at product market fit for that particular use case?
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that.
Yeah, like we choose after after like going back and forth between diseases and this kind of stuff. So we are right now focused on women's health, especially ovarian cancer and endometriosis. The reason why we are focused on that, it is it is a growing problem, and the problem is going bigger, because you can also have like a perfect solution for a perfect thing, but if the market is really small and the problem is really small, then it also like means not much. So let's say so. But in our case, especially like those two fields are a, a really growing concern, and it's also really expensive to treat as well. So, and most of the cases, they are basically they basically miss the appointments and all this kind of stuff. So that is right now why we are focused on, especially on these two certain diseases. And the other thing is also why we are focused on that is there is this growing demand on on women's health, especially like ovarian cancer, endometriosis, like from certain pharma companies. Like that was also the second reason why we choose that, because we have been approached by a couple of them, but also we have been seeing that those companies are moving into that field, then that means that there is something going on in the field, and it will be potentially like a bigger market, a growing market, and faster growing market. And that is right now where we are heavily focused on, and that we kind of doing the trials and working on the pilot project and such.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's another startup I should connect you to.
Mhm,
Um, the CEO there is Soma Babarak.
mhm.
Babarek, rather. The company's called Hero Biotech, and they also focused on endometriosis.
Oh, okay.
So that was episode 498, so just before the 500th sort of a show. But I'll connect you to her too, because she was basically explaining to me, like in the endometriosis diagnosis space, specific, not treatment, but just diagnosis. Like there's been zero innovation there since
Yes.
1970.
Yes, exactly. And usually, if you like, usually it's like if you want to like catch it, or like usually like endometriosis is diagnosed like after 5 years, which is already too late.
Yeah, you
And
fucked them.
treatment is, yeah, exactly, and the treatment is huge, not only expensive but huge painful as well. So,
Mm.
and yes, that field is basically left alone, and that is we. And exactly for that reason, if you catch it really early, then it's just a certain thing that you can overcome with certain drugs. So really like simple process, like, but yeah, that is exactly the case, especially in Nemophis.
Yeah, and it's massive, dude. It's like it's 190 million women are diagnosed every year, and
Yes,
it's well,
yes,
that are affected by endometriosis. I'm not even sure if they're
correct,
diagnosed properly because that's a
correct,
whole other conversation.
correct.
But I think because you're after this, well, you're trying to make a difference in the same space, and you're doing it in a different way. So I think there might be
Yes,
a strategic partnership there. So I'll connect
definitely,
you to her too.
definitely.
It doesn't matter who gets there, as long as someone, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Who gets there
yes,
first, as long as you get there.
correct.
And so, what are you struggling with right now?
Oh, right now, yeah, I mean, of course, like the as I think if not only for us, I think anyone in the space, especially in medtech or life science, like regulations, which are still not moving that fast, but they are moving. That's promising, definitely, because like right now, for example, Medicare, like as insurance companies are reimbursing remote monitoring things and such. But still, it is like a process. So it is really, it's not like it is still like slow. It's not really that fast, although they are changing something. That is the biggest struggle that we have. And the second thing, also like definitely like growing the team and also keeping up with the demand that we are getting. So, but I think I can say that for easy, like the biggest hurdle that we need to go is overcome is the regulations. So navigating
Mm.
through that.
So, how do you scale something like this if it's direct to consumer? Assuming that let's just stick with endometriosis diagnosis for now,
Mhm,
using medical imaging and using
mhm,
Ponstech to do it. So,
mhm,
there's 190 million women. Let's just say,
mhm,
for argument's sake, there's 10 million or a million. Like, how do you
mhm,
scale this? Like, it's
mhm.
hardware, it's not SaaS. So,
Oh,
how do
mhm.
you figure that out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have been like we have been thinking about that like really in the early stages. So and the result that we or the result that we did a couple of market research, like I think three of them, like really long ones. So and and the only way you can scale in that is through partnerships. There's no other way. So like developing strategic partnerships, especially with pharma companies, because they are the gatekeep. They have all the network. They can kind of influence everyone. And like first of all, having these strategic partnerships with those pharmaceutical companies, and the second thing is also having strategic partners in these new approach, um, like value based primary care, or like these hospital at home companies. Like in our case, definitely like pharmacies like CVS, Walgreens, or such that are entering the field. And that will be also that's also our approach. So we basically want to have them partner as partners. They already have like these huge like membership pool or network, or they already have these members, and then we will be basically their technology provider. So that is how we see the only, I mean, at least at the moment, like the only way that we can scale really fast and reach out to those huge potential markets.
Yeah, one of the things I'm seeing from a funding perspective, right? It's just like cool. So you need to do 5 million as a raise for your seed. So your
Yeah,
mind immediately goes, med tech funds.
yeah,
Like how many of those can I find? Maybe I can
yeah.
get more angels to get to my total raise
Mm-hmm.
amount.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's often overlooked is the role of a strategic partner in actually funding you.
Oh yes.
Because, in other words, if you're providing a service to a strategic partner, you say to them, look, you give me 1 million of that, so 25% of that seed round, and then
Mm-hmm.
we will reduce your cost of, what I mean? Like you give them so
Exactly.
it's not just about the capital, it's actually about solving a go to market problem,
Yeah.
like for them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think
Yes.
it's and who's doing it really well is Farm from a Box. Let's see. Farm from a Box. Bringing up for every Brandy DeCarli. I had her on the show recently. And she was basic. So what they've done, just to put it into context for everybody. So what they've done is they've literally created, like, if you think about a shipping container, and like in there, you take that shipping container and you drop it onto a farm, and you can create sustainable agricultural solutions from that box. So it's like technology, rain analysis, crop sampling, like it's next level shit. And so for her, she also went, and she's also done her seed. I think they've raised around 5 also. But where she was, what she was saying was, like, for her specifically, almost like you, it's like it's an outlier. It's not a SaaS thing. So you're looking at a particular type of investor. And what she tried to go retail investor. So angel, accredited, blah, blah. She was she got some money through them, but really where her true success came from funding was purely through strategic partnership. She was like, yo, if you guys don't get it, or you you don't like the unit economics of this thing, or whatever your sub story is, or why you don't think it's a good investment, Mr. Investor, she solved that whole thing and changed the whole conversation and changed her whole investment raising process by looking at a strategic partner and saying, okay, dude, this is how our technology, our Farm from a Box, can help you solve this problem in this context for that segment of your customer, which is worth this amount. Exactly. So give me $1 million, that help. So I think it's something that's often overlooked.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Like, basically, like onboarding like these potential first customers / investors. So that can be both at the end of the day. I totally again, and we like definitely that will be our case as well, because either it can be like a certain like a down payment kind of thing that will basically kind of like balance it and all this stuff, because at the end of the day they will be the first users and like of the system as well. Like, I mean, that is definitely something that we will work on, like, because that will also bring some value as well. It's not only they will invest like 1 million or X million, but it will also create these potentially, that can a big like potential be like a $50 million deal in the following 3 years and this kind of stuff, so on the revenue side.
Yeah, excuse me. And the other thing, because I help startups raise money also, and another thing that I think oftentimes is, I basically think the whole process around raising money is fucking it's insane. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's cool. So prepare a pitch deck, then you got to source investors, then you got a cold outreach. Maybe you get a warm if you have a lead investor from a warm referral, if you have a lead investor from a previous round. And it's so dated. Like, the whole process through which a startup founder raises money, it's commoditized and it's dated. It hasn't changed. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but at least that's what my sense is. Like, it hasn't changed, because everyone's doing it the same way. And I think investors, especially now, they're not geared up to deal with lots of deal flow. Like, most of them don't even open up your cold email in an inbox. You know what I mean? Because they have 50 a day or 25 a day. So like, all the VCs I know, like, they only deal through referrals. So it's like, hey, this is Sona. He's the founder and CEO of Ponstech. My name's Matt. These guys are worth looking. Like, that for me is where the leverage is. But certainly, if you're raising for your first time, like pre-seed or seed, in some cases, like, I think that process is really, it hasn't changed at all.
No.
Yeah, and I think, like, there's a huge opportunity to change the way that you go and raise money.
Correct. No, I totally agree. It doesn't change at all. So it's even getting harder. Like, most of the existing investors, they do, like, I totally agree. Like, they do either follow up investments. They invest only in the companies that already invested. They don't do new investments, or they do really, as you said, warm interest. And coming to your first points, in that case, it's also like a potential like introduction from a strategic partner to an investor is also, like, again becoming really important, because then the investor can see, okay, look, they are the potential customers and they like it and they are introducing me. Then they are a little bit more, really not a little bit. I mean, they are really then interested to invest if you got an introduction through a potential customer, that will, or partner, as I said, that will be huge impact.
Yeah, and the other thing also, it's like, sometimes debt is just the way to go. Like if you have some
Yeah.
revenue, like hold on to your equity. Like I've brought on
Oh yeah.
a partner, Grasshopper Bank. So they're like a digital bank for startups,
Hmm.
basically. So they have their own venture fund and what have you. And they do SBA loans based on like revenue and that kind of thing. And then they also have a venture specific fund. And so, like you could have one conversation, to get it done,
Hmm.
especially if you're raising
Yeah.
500K. You know what I mean? Like, so what? It's
Yeah.
really not. So basically,
Right.
the option A is you go and get 50K times
Hmm.
10 or 25 times. It's a lot of people to say yes to. Or if you
Hmm.
have some revenue, you just go to like an SBA. They're learning like
Yeah.
$3-5 million, and
Yes.
so it's prime plus three, but at least you hold on to your equity so
Correct.
that if when you do go and you hit a certain, let's just say you hit a
Mhm.
certain revenue number, now you can start to have equity based, you
Correct.
know, um,
Correct.
capital
A bigger
or
problem.
conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I think my point being is that think differently about funding.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like what options are you not exploring? So for
Mhm.
instance, now like literally after this show, I've got the founder of omnisync.io, Rupak Doshi, coming on the show. He's based out in California, and he's built a marketplace platform which literally does grant-based funding for
No.
startups purely. So I know you've taken a couple of grants too. So so like, what role could that play? So I
Yes.
don't know. I think a lot of fun, and I think my sense is that because you're so stretched, like you're trying to build product, trying to hire people, you're trying to make sales, you're trying to do all these things, and now you've also got to be CFO.
Okay.
You
Correct.
know,
Correct. Especially early stages, it's like everyone is doing everything, and I totally agree. Grants are really usually people think about grants like, oh, okay, they will not give us to us, it will be too difficult, but usually it's not the case. If you just submit something, then grants are always kind of like not really free money, but at the end of the day it is like kind of uh like a good source, especially till a certain point, then you
yes,
can do. I totally agree.
cool, man. So listen, Sona, I want to have a bit of fun with you. So I want to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine. And if you could go to yourself on day one, like the first day of this startup, what advice would you give yourself about building Ponstech?
Oh, really good question. So I will say that uh, I will say that focus on only one thing, so solving one problem, and focus on and find a problem that has a big impact and that has a big problem connected to that. So that will be definitely my advice for me if I had this time machine.
That's awesome, man. So, so one more question, and then we'll wrap up. But why do you do what you do? Like, what's this ultimate contribution you hope to make to humanity?
Mm. Ah, I mean, in our case, it is really like bringing something to the community or to the people, especially that doesn't have the opportunity to access decent healthcare. So, because like there was this study like about recently, like 80% of the minorities living in the US, they don't have access at all to decent healthcare, like 80%. So that's a huge number.
Hmm.
And if you go like outside here, like developing countries and or like smaller villages and these kind of things, like around like over like 60% of the deaths are happening because of preventable diseases. And like, I mean, in our it was like always our mission to say that okay, we will develop a technology that will give the opportunity to people without focusing on their background, without focusing on their financial backgrounds or race or ethnicity. They need to have access to decent healthcare, and that is our ultimate goal. Like developing PONS, and because we have also like a project that will be donating our technology to UNICEF and Doctors Without Borders, so that they will basically be using it like in any place in the world. So because they are already working in difficult spaces and all these kind of things. So that is our mission, and that is how we see like PONS hopefully like in the following years to become a company that has this impact.
Cool, dude. Well, look, that's generally the prerequisite for success, mate. So I'm wishing you and all the team the very best of the future, man. We'll keep chatting. I'll connect you to those people. All right.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me, and it was great to be here.
Anytime. Thanks, Erna. Thanks, everyone. Ciao.